Alright, so we've got a quick review on multiplying and dividing rational expressions. So we're going to divide these two rational expressions. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do, whether I'm multiplying or dividing, is to factor first, because I know once I put these two expressions together, I'm probably going to need to simplify. And I can only simplify by canceling out common factors. So first I'm going to factor the first numerator, and that's going to factor into y plus 6 times y plus 1, because 6 times 1 is 6 and 6 plus 1 is 7. Okay, then I'm going to factor the denominator. That gives me y minus 9 times y plus 1, because negative 9 times 1 is negative 9, and negative 9 plus 1 is negative 8. So then the second numerator factors to y plus 7 times y plus 2, because 7 times 2 is 14, and 7 plus 2 is 9. Okay, and then the second denominator factors to y minus 9 times y plus 2, because negative 9 times 2 is negative 18, and negative 9 plus 2 is negative 7. Notice, all of these numerators and denominators were just trinomials with an a value of 1. Okay, much alike what we did before when we were factoring. Okay, these are just the basic trinomials that we should remember how to factor. Now, since I've got all my factors, now I know that I need to divide these expressions. So in order to divide rational expressions, that's when I do the keep, change, flip, okay, or multiply by the inverse. Okay, so I'm going to keep this first rational expression the same. I'm going to change this to multiplication, and I'm going to flip the second rational expression, meaning the numerator becomes the denominator, the denominator becomes the numerator. So I'm going to rewrite my new expression. So I have y plus 6 times y plus 1 over y minus 9 times y plus 1 times, not divided by anymore because I changed it to multiplication, y minus 9 times y plus 2 over y plus 7 times y plus 2. Notice these are switched. Okay, so this one's the same. I changed it to multiplication and I switched it. And now we're going to multiply. So notice we're actually reviewing multiplication in this division problem, because you're never going to actually divide rational expressions. You're going to change them to multiplication expressions and simplify them from there. Okay, so step one was factor first. Now the next thing I need to do is cancel out common factors. Okay, well, I see a lot of things I have in common. Remember, it has to be in common with a numerator and denominator. So I see a y plus 1 on the bottom and a y plus 1 on the top. I can cancel those out because y plus 1 divided by y plus 1 is just 1. So times 1 doesn't do anything. I can get rid of those. I also have a y plus 2 times a y plus 2. Okay, now both of these are in the same fraction. And that's okay, because one's in the numerator and one's in the denominator. One's in the numerator, one's in the denominator. But then I also have a y minus 9 in this numerator and a y minus 9 in that denominator. Well, those cancel as well, because remember, when we're multiplying, these are all like the same fraction anyway. So that's 1 in the numerator, 1 in the denominator. So most of my factors actually ended up canceling. The only factor I am left with in the numerator is y plus 6. And the only factor I'm left with in the denominator is y plus 7. Okay, so this is what I get when I divide these two rational expressions. But I don't get that every single time. There are some values in which I would not get this, and those are called excluded values. Okay, the excluded values come from anything that would be dividing by 0. So if a denominator is 0, then that would be dividing by 0. So I can't have anything that would make either of these two denominators 0. And the second numerator, if I'm dividing, also can't be 0 because that would be dividing by 0 too. Okay? Now, I've got two choices here. I could either start from scratch and set all three of these trinomials equal to 0 and start solving them, or, since I've already done all the hard work of factoring, I've just got all these factors. Okay? If any of these factors equal 0, it would make these whole numerators or denominators equal 0. So all I have to do is set each factor equal to 0. So I see that y cannot equal 9, because if it's 9, then this denominator would be 0, and this denominator would be 0. It also can't equal negative 1, because that would make this denominator 0. It can't equal negative 2, because that would make this denominator 0. And also, it would make this numerator 0, and I can't divide by 0, so the numerator can't be 0 either. And negative 7, because the negative 7 would make this numerator 0. Okay, so this is my final answer. Y plus 6 divided by y plus 7. The excluded values, y cannot equal 9, negative 1, negative 2, or negative 7. Okay, so remember, always factor first and then cancel the common factors once you're multiplying.